Deborah, with her 30 years of being an entrepreneur and creating over 7 companies, knows exactly what it means to accept the mission. When you make that decision, when you accept the mission to become a solopreneur, to take yourself and your talents to market, then you embrace a life of not only unlimited possibilities, but also the unknown. It's an elixir of fear and bravery that only someone who's taken the leap really understands. On our show, Deb digs deep with her guests to highlight what you, the listener, wants to know. The stories, the whys, and the hows to navigate the journey to success. Get ready to hear from some of the most incredible mission takers from Generation Z to Boomers. So sit up, perk up, and get ready to be blown away. Now here is your host, Deborah Drummond.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back to the Mission Accepted podcast show. If you have never been in here before, you are going to have a treat today, that's for sure. But I want to let you know what we do. What do we do on here? What is Mission Accepted? What's that all about? What are you talking about? Well, we are a show of entrepreneurs, ultrapreneurs, creatives, and media. So basically, if you were crazy enough to say, yes, I've got a gut feeling, I want to be an entrepreneur of some kind, or if your back was against the wall and it was the only choice out, or whatever your story is, where you decided to get that little voice inside and go, okay, I think I'm going to make it bigger. You could be entrepreneuring off the side of your desk, or you could be full game, full in it, like our guest today. Also, if you're an ultrapreneur, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we're going to talk to Darby about what it's like to do more than one thing in one project. Gen Z, we have a week for you. So look, there is so many people coming into this whole world of being an entrepreneur. Like never before have we seen people saying yes. So in my day, and I know that if you're listening and not viewing, I'm not 20. But in my day, if you wanted to make extra money, you had a part-time job on top of your full-time job. Now people are multiple jobbing and multiple entrepreneuring and on many different projects, many levels. And honestly, they're starting some of this at 15, 16, 18, 19, 20 years old. There is something to be said about this wave of Gen Z entrepreneurs, but there is something very cultured about talking to someone who's done this for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And I believe on this show, what we do is we bring the generations together because there's always something to learn from each generation. That being said, today we have, how do I say this? We just have one classy lady whom when I was younger, and we're not that different in age, but honestly, she was an icon for women in the music industry. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. This woman is also from Canada. And I had the fortunate advantage of being around the music scene enough to watch her play on multiple stages. She has a voice unknown to others. I personally, as someone who adores Janis Joplin, and I don't know if she loves Janis Joplin as much as I do, but she's got that kind of voice that is very distinct. When she sings, you know it. So I want to bring onto the show today Darby Mills from Darby Mills Project. She also has another project she's going to talk about. And if you are as old as I am, you would have known she was formerly with Headpins. And so that you're like, oh, that's the voice that Deb's talking about. So Darby, thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Hey.
Thank you. So look, you've had quite a lifetime of being on stage. Let's talk a little bit about what it's like to be off stage or backstage or wanting to be on stage. How old were you? When did you start your music career?
Okay. I was in grade 10, so junior high. Yeah. And friends of mine had a band, and I've told this story so many times. If you've heard it before, I apologize. But they were rehearsing in the bedroom of a friend of mine, and some girls and I went to watch them rehearse a band. Woo! And they started playing "Crazy on You" by Heart. And I started laughing and like, oh my God. And they stopped and they're like, what's wrong? What's your problem? Like, how rude, as I realize now. And I said, well, a guy can't sing Heart. And they said, well, you think you could do better? And I'm like, yeah, okay. So they threw the album cover, I believe, at me. That's the story I've been telling anyway. Now that as I'm aging and losing my mind, I don't know if that's the truth anymore. I don't know what's the truth anymore, but that's the story I'm telling. And I sang Crazy on You by heart that day. And a month later, I was on stage with them in 100 Mile House. We took 2 vehicles. Of course, one broke down. There were 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, like 8 of us, 9 of us, going with all our gear in a broken down van and an old car, driving a 5-6 hour drive to what was my very first, I didn't get paid, but first they got paid gig. And I knew that, you know what, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And here I am 45 years later going, what was I thinking?
The power of retrospect, right? So, I mean, that really is, that's a commitment. And I love that story because it's kind of inspired. It's, what I was saying when I was talking earlier about sometimes people decide they're going to be an entrepreneur. They do a business plan. They talk to people. They get their ideas. They bounce up. But maybe that's what they do these days. I know in my day, and it sounds much like yours, you had an inspiration, and it's kind of like the inspired action came before the career. The inspired action for me to, I'm sitting in a massage, class. And the second day I was in that course, I was like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Well, I did it for 27 years and 30,000 clients. And then something else shifted and I got inspired to move over in that direction, but still in the same field of helping people. You have been in that same sector. And so for you, it sounds like it was very much an inspired action. And then you kind of figured it out later.
I always knew that I would be a performer. I thought I'd be an actress. I don't know what the right thing to say is anymore, but
exactly.
I always knew. I think I came being a comedian as a child, the fourth child, the baby. I don't know. I just always knew that that's what I wanted to do. So be in front of people and entertain. So music it came to me at the right time. And to be 100% honest, I just really wanted to travel and stay in hotel rooms, which is something that I regret to this day, because I have stayed in a lot of hotel rooms, some of them very nice and some of them very not nice. And, but it's definitely been an adventure. I don't really regret it. I regret some of the terrible decisions that I made and some of the terrible things that have happened to me, but it's made me who I am today, of course. Right. So,
yeah.
You live and learn, the old saying, and hopefully you get smarter as you go along. Hopefully, I'm waiting.
Well, and I think that's what does what happened. And when I take a look, Darby, at kind of people that are coming up now. So you've been in your career for 40. I've been mine just over 30. And I think sometimes when I look and I'm like, I'm sure maybe like our parents thought of, it's like, it's so much easier. They can get in, they can get so much exposure. Someone can go and do something on TikTok or Instagram and have a whole bunch of followers, where we really had to build. There was like build, and it was reputation, and it was handshake, and it was hoping to know someone. I remember it's like, you just got to wait till you're, it's who you know, not how many people you know. And I think now it's a little opposite. It's how many people are following, and that brings that person to them. So, I guess we could, say it's easier or different, but people don't really know that. If you were to take a look at your career and there was, someone who is an artist out there that wants to kind of make their way, was there something that you did that you think when you look back, you're like, that was a pivotal moment for me, or that was the aha moment that shifted things?
I was very lucky that I was barely 2 years into the industry. I graduated, loaded up my Gremlin, and moved to Calgary. Joined a few bands there, got a day job there at a record store to help, offset, because you weren't really making much money back then at 18 years old. And then moved to Vancouver, joined a band there, got tossed out there, moved back to Calgary, moved to Edmonton, back to the island, back to, in 2 years, under 2 years, I think I moved 5 times just trying to find where the work was. And what a wonderful era it was to come into in late 70s, early 80s, that music was, or live music there was a bar on every street corner. And Vancouver, by the time I settled in Vancouver, you could work even the headpins in the beginning. We worked the first 6 or 7 months of my being in the band, because I was the second vocalist. You could play for 3 months in Vancouver, just circling all the clubs, because you'd play for a week. There was no just Friday, Saturday gig. And the bands, the lower bands, had to actually do a jam on Sunday and then load up and move to the next gig. And that would either be Vancouver or a drive to Calgary or Edmonton or there was so much work. You could hone your craft. So I did more work with the band Steelback, who I was in prior to joining the Headpins. I probably did more shows with Steelback the year I was with them, and then the year I was in the bars with the Headpins, than I've done in my whole career since. There was that much steady, just work. And if you didn't get good with that much access to work, then you probably shouldn't have been in the industry. You'd made the wrong choice, right? But the right decision, even though the band I was Steelback, the boys in Steelback were like, Brian and Ab were part of a band called Chilliwack, and they had formed with Matt Frenette, the Headpins, and a singer called Denise McCann, and they were in the bars waiting for Chilliwack to finish their legal battle because their record company president had died all of a sudden. And so everything got halted for them and whoever else was signed by that label. So they got picked up by Solid Gold. They put a new record out. And while they were doing all that, Brian and Ab were working in the bars because there was so much work, keeping their chops up. And I don't think they were doing it for money. I think they had enough. But about 6-7 months in, they let Denise go. They brought me in. And within 6 months, we had been signed by their new label. And into the studio when we went, and we left the studio and went out on the road and toured. So I think the most important decision I made as far as keeping my musical career moving forward at a record pace was the fact that I left Steelback, even though they're saying Brian and Ab are going to go back to Chilliwack and this band's going to be for naught, and we'll never work with you again if you leave the band, right? And which was like, oh, okay, well, let me stay then. I just thought it was a opportunity to work with established, credible artists. And I took the chance at being someone who no one would ever work with again. And strangely enough, seems to be a theme in my life that 40 years later or 36 years later, that's not necessarily what's happening, but kind of sort of is. But that was a very important decision for me to make at the time, which was go against what the people I was working with, against their opinion of what would happen. And I spent the next 4.5 years touring the world with the Headpins, and then really set me up to do almost anything I wanted to do. And at that point, it was my responsibility to take it from there.
Oh, so I think that's really pivotal when you are an entrepreneur or an artist, or, and I mean, I'm blessed that I get to do this, and I hear people that talk about those choices, the crossing the road, and when you have whatever community is, I was thinking about this yesterday. A lot of people that I talked to, they're like, my family didn't support me. This didn't support me. My friends. I mean, I remember my girlfriend, when I looked at her and told her what I was going to do for a living, she literally looked back to me. Now, this was someone who I looked up to in business. She probably had quadruple my income. And she's like, the world's not ready for you. That's not, I was talking about doing an aromatherapy home party company. And she's like, no one's ready for that. And I think the first 4 years of my success, it was just based on being so pissed at her and so angry that it fueled it. But there are those decisions that we make that sometimes really fall in our favor. And it's hard to make it when you've got your back against the wall like that. And sometimes they don't. But obviously the one that you did, it did. And I think that's a really pivotal moment, not sitting in that fear. And honestly, it reminds me of a saying. It's like, really, truly, if it's not gonna matter in 5 years, right? Don't give it more than 5 minutes, because obviously with the talent that you had, they may not have taken you back, but you would have had a plethora of people begging for you to even step up higher. But who knows that in the moment that you're making those decisions, right? Yeah.
It was all working with your gut, and because I really didn't know anything about the music industry. I was a rookie, a complete rookie. I lived in a very small town. We had AM radio. I didn't know what was hip. I didn't know what people were listening to. Rock and roll to me was Neil Diamond, because that's what my parents listened to. I did, however, after sitting in with that band, they broke up shortly after, and I formed my own band with one or two of the members of that band. We rehearsed in my parents' basement for better part of a year, let's say, through grade 11 and maybe grade 12. And it was in that band that, and I was crazy about Crazy on You and Heart, the Dreamboat Annie album. And I learned how to sing basically by mimicking Ann Wilson. And in the band that we were called Presence, after the song by Led Zeppelin, and or was it Kashmir? I can't remember, sorry. But anyway, the guitar player, young guitar, he was only 16, I think, came with the Pearl album to rehearsal one day, and he said, "You should listen to this." And I'm like, who's this? And it's somebody you sound like, and she's huge. And I'm like, okay, so who is this Janis Joplin lady?
Yeah.
And that's when I was introduced to her. I think I was 17 at the time, and I kind of took it to heart. I didn't realize till later just how she was Janis Joplin, and I get it. I got it a few years later, but at the time it was like, okay, so I sound like her. I'll sound more like her, and I think that's kind of what got me the job with the headpin. Although I'm not sure I was doing stuff like Nina. Was it? Oh my goodness, a robot song.
Oh,
I was doing these moves and stuff. We were all over the place, right? But music back then, disco was starting to come back. You know, it was. I was doing everything, but they saw something, and Brian McLeod, I guess, saw something, and you know, I don't know, luck of the draw. I don't know. It happened.
It's talent. I mean, it's talent meets opportunity, meets bravery, meets meets divine, meets meant to be. Like, I think things line up. They line up differently for different people. And obviously it was very much a different generation. That's hilarious that you said Janis Joplin. I had no idea that. And I absolutely know the Pearl album back and forth. That's really interesting. And music was very different. And when you talk about that, because I know, you know, Club Soda and Metro and Rockin' Tonight and Coconuts, and that whole scene, Town Pump and all that, there was such a big, strong music family. And I, you know, obviously I think we all miss that. And there is so many different types of music. I mean, music is just, and it's such an incredible healer. Music is. So you have this, you know, you're having this career, you're going through this experience. As a woman, was there, I mean, we talked about that. It's funny, I'm tapping into some pretty great stuff right now, working with She Is the Music, with the Dublin event that I told you about, how we're walking across Ireland, and Alicia Keys has a charity called She Is the Music. And I've been getting the statistics in because that's the kind of person I am. I'm like, so, you know, really what is going on in the music industry for women? And it's been a little surprising to see how low the numbers are of women producers and women songwriters. And did you ever have an experience where it was advantageous to be the only one on stage that was a woman, or what was your experience like?
I just became one of the guys. Being a woman out there just didn't work, really. Nobody cared. I carried my own gear, even right up to I remember being 5 months pregnant, carrying a 40-pound anvil case with my in-ear monitors in it. There wasn't much empathy to be a female in my experience, but I didn't let it stop me. I had a a trucker's mouth. I fit in the best I can or could. And it's only been just in the last 5, maybe 10 years that I've realized, you know what, I'm not a guy, and I'm not going to take that rhetoric anymore. Or I've just grown into my own skin, I guess, and realized that if you're not going to fight for yourself, very seldom will you find someone else who will fight for you. It's and how important having a supportive team behind you. Find those people that believe in you and treat them well. And I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure out how to make a living at this business. At 62 this year, it's still a OMG. What do we do now? Yeah. For me, anyway. I can't speak for anyone else in the position that I'm in, but.
Well, I think that, I mean, that's always that's the behind the stage scene, you know. It's like, I think with anyone who, whether I was just talking to an artist this morning, whether it's myself as an entrepreneur, whether I talk to other entrepreneurs, I mean, it's an ongoing, that's why I really wanted to talk about it being a mission, because the bottom line is you take it once, you decide to take on the cause once, but the papers keep coming. I mean, it's changing. If I heard the word pivot one more time, I'm going to, but it's, pivoting and changing and learning and growing with not only generations that change, but also who we change as people. Like, I'm not the same business person I was 10 years ago, right? Whether you get wiser, I think the important thing is, as you get wiser, is to stay more open, but also use that strength. Like you said, you wouldn't do something maybe 20 years ago that you would do 5 years ago. And we find ourselves, somehow we find our voices, and get okay with those voices as well. And when someone's, our boundaries are better. Our definition of self is better. The people who we associate with hopefully get better. But it's a journey. Like, it's such a self journey. So, when someone says, hey, I'm just going to go work at a record store instead of trying to be an artist, or, hey, I'm going to go get a job instead of being an entrepreneur, I'm like, it's not like I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be really brave. And sometimes I admit, pretty stupid to not read the signs. Didn't you see that coming? Like, I was hoping it wouldn't happen, type thing. But if it's something I love, being on stage, I love, most of the time I love singing, but I love the interaction. It is, like I said, from the time I can remembering, I knew I would be a performer in some sense. And thank goodness my parents they let me load up my gremlin with all my worldly possessions the week after I graduated, and said, go figure it out. So the fourth child, though, I don't know if they'd have let my oldest sister do that, but the fourth child, they're like, okay, just go do it. But my mom had become an entrepreneur at the time that my last 10 years at home, let's say. So I kind of knew that sense. Yeah.
That's awesome. So who made influence on you throughout your career? Was there, there's people like myself, we looked up to you. We're like, oh my God, Darby's got an amazing voice. I remember going to see Nazareth at the Commodore, and a whole crew of us were going to go see Nazareth. And this wasn't that long ago. Yeah. And no offense to Nazareth, if anyone's listening, but we all went, and we obviously knew you and knew your band and knew Nazareth, right? And so we all went. We're like, oh, Nazareth is playing. And every single one of us at the table, there must have been 20 of us, went, well, Darby sure kicked Nazareth off the stage. You guys were the opening act, and honestly, you should have been the show. But so sounded great. And so we looked up to you. Was there anyone that, obviously you were inspired by Nancy. Is there anyone that really kind of you had your eye on, that you thought, wow, they're an amazing band, or that's an amazing person? It doesn't even have to be in the music industry. Just, was there someone that you looked up to?
I'm sure there were, and I'm sure it changed as the seasons went on. while I was in the Headpins, I looked up to Brian McLeod, but in all honesty, he was a brute. He was brutal. And a radio announcer once did an interview with me not that long ago and said, I'd heard once a term that working for Brian McLeod was kind of like boot camp. And I'm like, you know what? That's exactly what it was. The training that went on, the time I spent in the studio with them. It was like, do it right, or you get a tongue lashing. And but I don't regret. I wish it hadn't been that way. Maybe then again, we lost Brian anyway, so I was thinking maybe the band wouldn't have fired me back in '85. But at that point, I was still enough of myself to not like, or to have a point where things got to a particular, and I'm like, this isn't good. This is not me. I don't like what's going down here. I cannot stand behind this. And I spoke out and I got fired.
Right.
So live and learn. Would I do that again? I probably would, because I have my foundation. I was brought up the way I was brought up, and things that were going on. I couldn't stand for it. So it cost me my time with the Headpins. And
right.
What do? You either be true to you, or you live someone else's dream and just hope that it doesn't come back to bite you. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So a saying that I've learned since leaving the Headpins 6 years ago was, there's always going to be a hurdle. There's always going to be a struggle to get to point whatever. So do you want to get to someone else's point whatever, or do you want to get to your own?
Right.
So seeing as you're always going to have to fight, build your team, build your team, which is kind of what I did before I left. I knew that I had a pretty good ground, foundation of people that supported and made my decision. And after 36 years, I just went, again, we're at a point where I can't agree with the way things are being done, and I have to step away, and it's cost me dearly. But once again, I'm fighting and jumping those hurdles to get to my point, whatever, not theirs. So,
and I think that's really, when people hear that, I hope it lands for them. You just said after 36 years. Here's the interesting thing. I believe that for some people, they're like, oh, the longer I stay, the easier it is to go, but not really. I think that when you've been in something for a long period of time, you've aligned, there. I mean, even when you talk about marriage, right? When you talk about marriage, most psychologists will tell you for every year you were in that marriage, there's 2 months of reconfiguring that needs to happen. So when someone, divorces and 6 months later, they still haven't got it figured out and their brain's foggy, it's like, because when you work as a unit, whether it's 2 or 4 in a band or in a company or in a team or corporately or what have you, you psychologically rely on other people to do certain things because everybody has their place and everybody has their part. And it's an unwiring of that and a rewiring of that. And I think that's what also stops people from making decisions that they know they have to do until one day the dam breaks and they don't have time to build their foundational team and support them in that. And they're up against the wall and someone says something and they're out of there. And people are like, what the heck's wrong with him? What the hell's wrong with her? And it's like, because there's been a brewing, but it takes a time to rewire and reestablish and reset yourself and, kind of see the silver lining. And that's exactly what you've done. I think it's incredibly commendable. And I think people should take to note to that. And also leads me to my next question. The last time we chatted, you had just released something with someone. You were saying that she was a really cool woman. Had you not just released a new song or?
I sang on a compilation album out of Europe called Circle of Friends, The Garden. And it was a tribute from a gentleman, Bruce Mee, to his mother who had passed in the past year or so, I guess. And there are artists, I'm 20 some odd artists participating in this. I did one song, I sang the vocals on one song, and it's really the best song, I think, that perhaps I've ever sang on. Not that it's the most commercial, but I love the production of it. And I'm trying to, as I age, I realize that this poor old thing right here, this piece of leather that I've brutalized for 40 plus years now, is getting older. And having COVID hit the year I turned 60 or 59, and having to take 2 years off, it's like saying to a marathon runner, well, you can run in your basement, but you're not allowed to go run outside for 2 years. And then, okay, marathon next Friday. So, I mean, you can train, which I did. And this other project you're talking about, we rehearsed throughout all of the 2 years of COVID that have existed, because every date we had got postponed because there'd be a new lockdown or a new this or a new that. So I still sang during that time, but not to the capacity that the headpin songs and my solo songs are even a step harder, or if not higher, more demanding than Turn It Loud and Dancing. I mean, these songs, there's 2 to 3 octaves in my solo album stuff. And I don't know what I was thinking when I did it at 27 or 28. Like, you're never going to be able to sing this at 60. I'm still managing to do it. However, 2 years off at that age, it's really hard to bring that back to the form it needs to be in to continue to do it night after night. Not that that kind of work exists anymore. And that's the other thing. I can't anyway. And I'm admitting my failures if it should be. The amount of work, even the last 5 years I spent with the headpins, if we were getting 12 shows a year, we were laughing. Classic rock for old women is not sought after in anywhere, to make a living on that type of schedule is
it's challenged. It's challenged.
But anyway,
I'm going to I just got an email from an organization in the US. I'm going to forward it on to you, and it's about women in rock music. And there definitely should be a connection there for you. I'm talking as if, no one's listening, but there's an organization that I just heard about that I'll send it to you. I know they're doing something in LA in May, but that might be a really good tap in. Because I think, sometimes when you come up against that, or when you are, when things change in your industry, sometimes it's like going back to those grassroots and finding those people that are having that same experience. So, I think it's just so interesting. Interesting, but we go along in our life, and I'm sure that the impact that you have made for so many people. I was sharing that with you earlier when we were talking just about how impactful and how we really looked up to you as women in that scene. Anyways, I was on the other end of it. You were singing and I was serving, but there was something about listening to you and hearing you that all of us waitresses, because there was no waiters, all of us waitresses were just like, oh man. And it was like, we drew from any woman that was in her own power. And honestly, if anyone has seen you, Darby, on stage, that definitely is a true definition of who you are. Like, when you're singing, it's like there's just a force to be reckoned. So I wasn't surprised at all when you said a friend of yours brought you an album, because when you see Janice on stage, it's the same kind of thing. She just had such presence. So bring us up to date a little bit. I was super excited when you told me that you had created a jewelry line. Like, tell us what you're doing now outside of coming back. And honestly, I'm so glad that music's coming back out. I can't wait to go and see you sing again. I'm sure I'll think your voice is perfect, whether you don't. But what other things have you got your hands into now?
My parents had reached the point where they needed to be under care in, I can't remember what year it was, but so my family tore them out of their home and put them into a a retirement home here in Vernon, and they were in dire need of care. So that became my job. So I spent the better part of 2 years getting both mom and dad to doctor's appointments, eye appointments, ear appointments, their tests, their having, anyway. So after 2 years of doing that, my wonderful doctor said, you know what, Darby, both your mom and dad are back on the proper meds. They're looking good. I don't want to see them for 6 months, which it had been. Each of them were going to the doctor once a month, if not more. And I'm like, yay, that's awesome news. And so probably about within the month of hearing that, my whole family went out for a dinner, and we sat with mom and dad for my dad's, I think it was 80th birthday. And the next morning she passed away. She had an aneurysm and passed away. And 6 months later, my husband had a heart attack and basically died in our driveway, in the ambulance in our driveway. And they performed CPR on him and compressions, and they broke 10 ribs and brought him back to life. And it was basically at that point, it was in 2015, that I just went, wow, life can change in a moment. My dad's alone now, 65 years they'd been together. And I almost lost my husband. And it's like, I need to get my stuff together right now and figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, because I was unhappy what was going on with the head pins. And so once my husband was better, we sat down and had a discussion. He co-managed the head pins in the original version of the head pins in the early 80s. And I said, do you want to be a team again? Do you want to get back into the music business? Because he had left, it had beaten him up and drug him through the mud enough that he left the industry. And I said, the two of us, let's make a team and let's put this together. And we shook hands and said, no more fighting over the wrong things. we have to be a team. We have to work together for that point where we're all working for. And I'm sorry, I've kind of got off track. What was
no, this is perfect. This is perfect. I think, no, I'm just saying what's next for Darby. And so this is great. So keep going with your story, girl. This is amazing.
Yeah, so that's kind of the losses and what could have been major losses in my life really spurred on the thought of you could be out of time. You just don't know how much. You don't think about time when you're younger. You just don't realize how short life can be. And so you have to take and grab, and all those reasons why you weren't doing it don't mean anything anymore. And the fear of walking away, what was my whole adult life, with the exception of that 5-year period after being let go by the headpins, the original version, that I did my own record. It was called Never Look Back at the time. I was in the headpins for my whole adult life. That was my identity. That's who I saw myself as. And so to walk away from that, knowing that it was going to be a tough battle, that the remaining members of the band did not appreciate me walking away, and they were going to prove that they were not happy with me walking away. And so that became, a real struggle. To this day, it's still a real struggle. Do we hire the name and the headpins, or do we hire the voice? And to this date, I have not won that battle, but eventually it's becoming apparent that I am not just the voice of the headpins. That's I'm more than that. I have a clothing not line, but in 2019, I had gone through my wardrobe closet and found a whole bunch of stuff that didn't fit and wasn't accurate anymore or appropriate for what I was wearing. And so I started sewing, augmenting and putting different things together on jackets and this and that, whatever. And I thought, what can I do to give back to the community? So I put about 10 pieces together, and I'd posted about this and figured out how I would do an auction at every show with one piece that I'd put together, and the winner would pick the charity that all the proceeds would go to in their community. Well, 2020 happened. And to me right now, that just kind of seems like a really weird thing to do, auction off clothing. So that's not happening anymore, but I've got 20 some pieces that I've made up that was my intention before COVID knocked that down. But back to the story about my mom and my husband, in that time, I spent a lot of time at home making sure my husband was okay, and had inherited back from my mom a box of rocks that I collected. I was a rock hound as a child, in a black velvet chocolate box. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to make a necklace out of one of these beautiful rocks. And I did. And my girlfriends all went, wow, that's so pretty. So I went, okay. So I made a few more for them for presents, and they loved them. And every time I saw them wearing them, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Well, here I am 6 years later. I've now officially made over 600 pieces, given away probably 100, and sold about 500 pieces off my website. And it's become a wonderful side career for me, and an incredible outlet for, I'm having a terrible day. I'm going to have a glass of wine or a puff, and I'm going to go downstairs, and I'm just going to let creativity take the wheel. And it has been such a blessing, such a blessing. I'm so grateful for, however, I had to lose my mom for that to happen, but boy, did it spark a wonderful new chapter for me.
Wow. That's, isn't that the way? Like, isn't that the way? Like, when you talk to most people that do most things, it was like, hey, it's just like a hey, like, like you're like, oh, I'm going to make a necklace out of this. 600 pieces later that are on someone's body, enjoying and having peace. And it comes, and when you say black velvet, and when you say, I was a rock hound as well, there was no surprise when I started selling gemstone jewelry. People were like, oh yeah. And so when you said you did jewelry, I was like, oh my gosh, I love jewelry. And coming in a black velvet box, and I was at, go find rocks at the beach or whatever. I mean, honestly, it can be just like that. But that also shows me that truly you're just an incredible creative, right? You're that entrepreneur. And there's, I can't wait to see these jackets and these pieces, and come back and hear that you sing on stage, and all of that coming back around. I mean, sounds like the pandemic's been interesting. And so finish the story though. So you and your husband, and so is he helping you produce music now, or what is that looking like?
Well, he's my manager, and so he does all the business. I am a true independent artist. I've approached one or two different agencies that have, it's a awful business. It really is. I encourage anyone to stay out of it unless they're driven to be in it. But so we cold call and we do our own thing, and Facebook and basically Facebook. I stumbled onto Facebook when some girlfriends and I put together the very first Vancouver 80s rock reunion, and we had 400 some people come. We rented a club, and the club had cameras all over their walls, in other words, projectors. And so we made it into a celebration of life for all those we'd lost from the 80s, because it was quite a community. We brought in 7 or 8 different bands to play that night. We did an auction and had people donate paintings and whatever they wanted to donate to raise money for. We ended up giving it to Tom Lee's fund the school music program. So we raised money there, and we did that all via no money, by getting on Facebook and turning it into a business, in the sense of that. And that's what, and that's only 12 years ago now that I was introduced to Facebook, and it has become, as crazy and stupid as it can be, it's become the way that my career has exceeded or continued to exist, is because I can't, again, an old female in classic rock, cannot rely on radio or newspaper or magazines for that matter, because they don't exist. Radio doesn't support new music at the best of times, let alone old new music. And newspapers don't talk about clubs anymore. The clubs don't advertise in newspapers anymore. It's become the job of the band to not only be a band, but to be their own promotional device. And so Facebook is, between my 4 different Facebook sites, I can reach 100,000 people on a good day. Not every day. The algorithms really can mess with you, but on a good day, you can do wonderful things. And it really has helped to bring an audience to my new identity, if you will. And it's what a musician, writer. So what does my husband do? He is very off on tangents again. So he's the support system. And because he was an agent for many years for the Feldman Agency, and he worked side by side with Bruce Allen. Those are two of the Western Canada's, if not Canada's, largest music management and agency teams that existed in the 80s. And Bruce Allen still is a god. And so is Sam, for that matter. So he was well trained, and he knew people from that era, and still is can call up someone from that era need be. We just the two of us and my great team, as well as Press Play, this new project that I put together. Because I'd mentioned earlier, if you get 12 shows a year at the stage that I'm at now, you are succeeding. I mean, classic rock acts, if they're working that much, you're doing well. And then they can tell you not, but look at their schedules. Anyway, but sorry, I lost my train of thought there. So,
well, you were talking about Press Play. Let's hear about what's going on there.
And so knowing that and realizing that my age and the leather throat and all that stuff, it's like this, I don't have a retirement fund. Musicians Union is not my friend. And I'm going to have to do this till they put me in the ground, basically. And I cannot see me in a miniskirt singing Turn It Loud and Don't Make It Feel Like Dancing and whatever other songs at 68, which it's like, well, that's just around the corner for me, or 70 for that matter. What can I do to prolong my existence in the business that I chose to make my life's work? So I thought, there's wineries galore through the Okanagan, and it's not a pub. It's not a place where you get up and dance and go crazy. To me, I believe it's a place where you grab your glass of wine, sit down, and watch a band. And it's like, I love 50s, 60s, and 70s tunes that I listened to on AM radio as a child. Songs like Stormy and Spooky, and I even do Cry Me a River by Julie London. I do To Sir with Love by Lulu, stuff like that, which is, it doesn't take the scream from Turn It Loud to pull that off. Which has lowered my octave now. I can sing 2 octaves now below what I sang when I joined the Headpins, which only pushed me higher and higher. Every album I just got high. As Bruce Allen said to me one meeting when I went in, I can't stand your voice. It's so scratchy and high. Good Lord, what's McLeod trying to do? So, thanks, Bruce. 30 years later, I figured it out. And now I'm singing songs that when you grab your glass of wine and sit down and listen to, you just close your eyes. I see people just close their eyes and lean back and go, oh my God, I haven't heard this song for so long. So it's a 4-piece band. We don't have horns. Half the songs we do need horns, but the players in this band are so talented that we don't have to have horns to pull this off. We all sit on high stools, with the exception of the drummer. And it's basically, just to sit back, close your eyes, and just relive those songs that you haven't heard for so long. And we've only done 2 shows because every show we've had up until last month has been canceled because of COVID or postponed. And so we finally have now, after rehearsing for 2.5 years, have now played 2 shows, because it started in September after the last show I did with the Darby Mills Project. We started rehearsals in 2019 and finally played a show 2 months ago for our first show, and then one again last month. So we're so excited. I'm pumped of the fact that this will extend my career. Those days that I can no longer do the scream and turn it loud, this will keep me through and hopefully keep me out of the box at the end of the road.
I am so excited. I'm so glad that you shared that, and obviously share with us when your events are, and we will send it out on our social media. I'm really looking forward to having your story and your presence in the book Mission Accepted, which will release in December. We have some time, don't panic. That's going to be able to really share your story and your mission, and because it's so important. There's so many gems that you have literally dropped for someone that is sitting here listening, that is aspiring to do something, whether it's in the world of music or acting or arting or whatever. It really is the same philosophy of life that gets us through from our passion, what, like that thing that screams inside us. And, you've been one of the brave ones that have held a career through many generations, through many ups and downs in the world, economic and health wise. And here we are on the other side, or what looks like to be the other side of something that has been a really serious cut to your industry specifically, not being able to get to live events, which has been the lifeblood of a lot of singers, obviously. And it's not the kind of thing that you can do on Zoom. A lot of us were able to pivot and do on Zoom, or, actors were able to send in things by Zoom. You weren't having concerts by Zoom by nature. So I'm really, really happy that things are starting to open up, and whatever we can do to help promote that. And I just can't wait to see your full spread in the Mission Accepted book that we'll talk about more. If you're wondering what I'm talking about out there, listeners and viewers, the Mission Accepted book that'll launch in December, and Darby's going to be featured in there. So I have a question for you. Now, this is going to either be the easiest question. Actually, before I ask this question, let's tell people where they can get in touch with you, because you've got jewelry, you've got this amazing project going on. You've just done this collaborative piece that you were talking about in Europe. So what is your website, and how can people access you?
Really easy, darbymills.com. Simple. And as a matter of fact, just last month, I launched a brand new website, and there's 3 different biographies on there that detail specific years or times. So we basically hear the same story you've just heard here, but all that information's on there, with the exception of press play. And it is called press play because of the music that I listened to came from a tape deck where you would press play. So it's nothing to do with press and
I got it. Maybe it was my age, but I got it as soon as you said press play. I'm like, you got to press play.
The band kind of twisted their head a few times when I said press play, and it wasn't until about 4 months ago that I did up the logo, and they're like, "Oh, you mean press play?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm not playing with the press. No, press play. Simple, straight ahead, easy.
Awesome.
But yeah, so we'll be adding that. We'll be putting that together really soon. And on Facebook, Instagram, Darby Mills Project, or Darby Mills A Voice, not The Voice, A Voice, which is I post the jewelry on there. I try to keep the jewelry I try to keep everything separate, because it gets kind of confusing for the project people to be going, what do you mean press play? It's like, oh crap. Okay. So now I've got to press play the review page, and a Darby Mills Project page, Darby Mills A Voice page, which is where I share the jewelry and stuff, or all of that's on the website, which is darbymills.com. So simple.
Oh, girl, I hear you. As an entrepreneur, I hear you. It's like, should I do separate websites? Should I not? But it's like, you know what? It's darbymills.com. This is you. This is who you are. And this is what you do. And the world are becoming entrepreneurs. It's rare you find one person that just does one thing. And so I celebrate you. So here's the question that I ask every single guest. And this is either going to be the easiest question for you, or it's going to be, you're just like, I'm not giving you an answer. I can't. So here's what I ask everybody, because you know how much I love music, clearly, and which is why this whole project in Ireland's going on. And we're going to have so much fun as that starts to build out. Oh my gosh, you're going to have to sing at one of the events. That's a whole other question. That's a whole other story. But here's the question. So you're moving to a desert island, which sometimes it sounds like it might have been a good idea. Me too. I'm moving to a desert island. Screw you guys. So you're going to a desert island. That's it. You've got room in your suitcase for one album. That's it. Just one. Yeah, I know. This is the album that you can't go to the dirt on the box without hearing. So what is the album you're taking with you to this desert island?
Oh man, that's such an unfair.
I know. I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah. Can it be 15 songs on a multiple album?
Yes, it can be. Someone's like, let's Zepplin's greatest hits or whatever. So one album that you're taking. I didn't say a song. I said an album. You get a whole album. What's it going to be?
It can't be a multiple. It can't be what are the old albums called? Where it had all the hit parade or something. You can't.
Oh yeah. Like, oh my gosh, remember what was it?
Right.
Oh, when I was little, it went from K-Tel to
K-Tel. That's right. Can't be a K-Tel album. Okay. Oh damn. You know what? That's an unfair question, because certain times in my life there were certain albums that were every day, and
I know,
and I'm not.
I know. I said it's either going to be easy or it's going to be difficult. And trust me, everyone goes through this, because those of us that have been on the planet for a while, because this shows exactly the power of music. For me, it is incredibly healing, and it follows us and changes as we get older. But if you were to pack it today, the suit that you're putting it in.
Yeah. I'm going to break the law. I'm going to break your rules. I have worked out to a 90-minute workout tape that I put together myself. And it's I was a Tae Kwon Do instructor for 9 years.
Wow.
And I took kickboxing class of about 15 to 20 crazy women. And I put together this tape. So I'm not following your rules, but I will take that tape, because what it is, or tape, good Lord, I have on my phone, I have a 90 minutes worth of songs. If I had to pick one, Katy Perry's on like 5 of the songs that are on there. Her early albums had some lyrics. I'm very much a lyric, obviously a singer. I'm a lyric person that are so inspirational. And so, but on this tape, it starts off with a nice, easy, I can't even remember all the songs on it, but yes, music is this tape. Even when I'm driving to Vancouver, which is now a 6-hour drive because of the breakdown in the highway and stuff from this summer after the fires, it's been a crazy 2 years. Evacuate our house because it might burn down. But this compilation of songs are just songs that are fighter songs. They're down and out, but get your act together songs. And that tape would keep me going, as it has 3 times a week for 7 years now. I listen to those songs, and when I finish my workout, I have been rejuvenated and a form of rebirth of self-confidence, and you can do this. So
is there one song in particular on there that really stands out for you?
Yeah. And I'm a very spiritual person. I don't necessarily, I'm slashing my throat here, believe in God the man, but I do believe in a higher power, a universe power. So Katy Perry's By the Grace of God. All right.
Well, I'm going to listen to that. I am so grateful that you came on the show. I can't wait to see how everything continues to unfold for you, and gets better and bigger. And I believe in just reward, and you have paid your dues. And I have no doubt the clouds are going to open anytime now and shower you with more abundance and more support and more give back, because you have definitely, how you think of that song. So many people still listen to their favorite song of that era. And honest to God, they get a lot of peace and a lot of inspiration and motivation from it. So thank you so much for everything that you've done. Thank you for coming onto the show. I know that we're going to have a continued conversation rolling into the book. And I absolutely want to know when you're playing, what you're doing, so we can send that out because, girl, I know you talk about being 62. First of all, I know if you're listening and not watching, you would be blown away to hear that this woman is 62 because you don't look it. You absolutely don't look it. So there's something about rock and roll that's good for the skin. I'll just tell you that because it's good for the soul. It's good for the skin. And so you're holding your own both professionally and aesthetically. So just thank you so much for everything you do. If you're listening, please share this. If you're viewing, obviously share it. You guys are the best audience ever. I keep telling you that, but the feedback we're getting and you guys sharing that, and just subscribe to the podcast show and share this. And if you think that you want to come on here and you want to tell your story and you got something to share, absolutely reach out. Super happy to have a conversation with you. So again, thank you so much, Darby. And we will see everybody soon.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Bye.